Apparently a statement has come out and it is freaking people out. We definitely need to talk about that. People are talking about JK's effect on the stock of the label. And then we have JK at the Super Bowl being talked about again. Stay down, Lisa, save Disci. Let's get into it. So I've mentioned this many times before. The community likes to bring up things from the past, and they'll bring it up every year, whether they're just reminded of it, like the Super Bowl, or they just feel like bringing this memory up again. A lot of times events get brought up again, or old controversies get brought up again, just because someone who is a part of the fan club just wakes up one morning in a bad mood and just remembers all of the things that pissed them off and then decides to go on a tirade online, and it becomes a trending topic. Of course, to some degree, some of the backlash or the controversy that gets brought up again makes some sense. And I can totally understand why they would be upset. But other times, while I can understand, it seems like it's too much. That reaction is too much for what the controversy actually was. One of the old controversies that was a big deal was the fact that apparently the label told JK to go ahead and enlist and removed the opportunity for him to perform at the Super Bowl. This wasn't an offer where he would be formally performing and it would just be him on stage, but he would be performing alongside Usher for standing next to. And I believe Usher had confirmed that he did ask, and the label said no because JK needed to enlist. Now keep in mind, when JK enlisted, it was, I believe, months before he was asked, or could have been months before. I highly doubt if the performance was like the next day or within the next week, that the label or the government couldn't have pushed the enlistment back, or JK wouldn't have wanted to push it back, and performed first and then went to the military. However, this controversy, when it gets brought up again, I don't think is ever looked at from a more sensible perspective. The label mentioned that JK could not perform because he had to go and enlist in the military, which was not wrong and not anything bad. People often think that the label was pressuring JK to enlist very soon or enlist much sooner than he needed to be because he was not at the age limit in which he had to enlist right away. And people were saying that he could have waited a little bit, but people felt like he was being pushed to enlist because the label wanted to get the BTS reunion back as soon as possible. Here's the thing that people don't realize. The label saying JK cannot perform because he had to go to the military was likely just the label mentioning the truth, not them restricting him to not perform. The label doesn't have the power to say when someone can go to the military and when someone cannot. And what we actually have no idea of is when JK decided to file to enlist. JK could have thought that he wasn't going to get asked to perform at the Super Bowl, because most people don't just think that they're going to get asked, and he just decided to go ahead and put in his enlistment papers. And if you don't know how the enlistment process works, basically the person who has to enlist has to register, and then once they're on that list and then they're on the registration, they just have to wait for the government to call them to start their enlistment. And it's usually not immediately. Sometimes it can take weeks to potentially even months before the military will call them. And then I think the idol has some extension that they can use. I remember reading it was like 3 or 5 extensions or something. However, JK didn't use any of those extensions, and he likely did find out that he was offered this performance at the Super Bowl much later. Why he didn't use any of those extensions, that's his choice, right? Now, something that people don't realize is that the idea of fame or notoriety is not the most important thing for an artist's career, because what at the end of the day would you consider to be one of the more important things for an idol? Maybe exposure and maybe money, right? And fame is kind of exposure, but being famous versus your music being well known is different, right? And those are things that are going to keep an artist going. Now, of course, the Super Bowl does provide a butt ton of exposure, but it's not the only way in which JK would be seen by that amount of people. Now, the World Cup is viewed by almost 2 billion people, while the Super Bowl is viewed by maybe 150 million people. While definitely a huge stage, the Super Bowl is nowhere near compared to the amount of exposure that JK got during the World Cup. And so in comparison, JK could probably think, this is not a big deal, I don't need to do this. Now, switching gears a little bit, this was very interesting. There was an investment company or some sort of financial company, I think, that talked about the stock concerning the label. I want to start by saying I don't know how true this is because I couldn't find the official source stating what I'm about to say, and everything kind of just leads back to a tweet that's talking about it. So I'm just going to refer to this tweet and to that this is what people are saying rather than it's actually a fact. So what is going on is apparently there is a company that has stated that if JK were to go solo, that all of their investors are going to get back into the market and the stock is going to go up. This is likely true because every time any of the BTS members do something or start promoting or whatever it is, the stock does inevitably go up. And this is why investors want to know when comebacks are happening, because depending on the artist, they may or may not want to invest, right? So for instance, when BTS comes back, it is pretty likely that the boys are going to do some sort of press conference, and we're going to see a huge rise in the stock, as I'm sure a lot of people that may or may not have pulled out during the hiatus or during the announcement of the hiatus would probably come back, right? And this is not financial advice, by the way. I'm not saying that when the boys make a comeback or when any of the members make a comeback that you should invest in the label. I have no idea about any of that sort of stuff. I'm just talking about like the general stuff. Of course, the idea does lead many people to also believe that if JK were to ever leave or do anything and get out of the label or get out of BTS, that the stock would inevitably go down. Would this happen? Probably, maybe. I mean, I would imagine if this were to happen, it would be this huge drama. It wouldn't be that he just left, right? Of course, then a lot of people might pull out of the label just because they don't want to be invested into drama. And especially when there's lawsuits and all that stuff involved, investors are very scared to put their money into a company that is doing all that. However, while that could happen, I don't believe that JK will be doing any of that sort of stuff. I don't believe there will be any drama with that. And I definitely don't believe there have been any official statements of him actually planning on leaving and causing the stock to drop. Because on the other hand, people do believe that he should leave because that would screw over the label and they want the label to be screwed over. In my opinion, I don't believe that the label is doing anything bad. And I talked about some of the things the label has done and believe that they have a right to do what they're doing. What I do personally find maybe a little bit more unethical or not as great is this huge rise in AI news. I don't even know what to make of it, but I see so many stories that are just completely meaningless. And what do I mean by that? I mean that I'm watching stories of what these AI script writers are doing, and there's no point to it other than the fact that they're trying to make a story seem real when it's not. The whole point of what they're doing isn't to spread a message, it isn't to have any sort of commentary, it isn't to bring awareness to an issue or explain an issue or even just to stop the hate, right? It's simply just to make up a story and do quite a bad job at doing that. I watched a video that basically talked about how JK left a statement asking the community to understand what he's going through and to basically apologize that he might be leaving the group or that he just wants to focus on his mental health right now. And of course, this is something that can be told in just 2 seconds. They're not trying to add commentary. They're not trying to add their own thoughts and opinions about this, like alleged statement. They're just simply talking about the statement and they're trying to drag it on for like 8 minutes. If you're not aware, 8 minutes is when they can add ads to their videos. So you can have ads for videos that are less than 8 minutes, but you just can't have multiple ads, or multiple ads won't run. Now, of course, a lot of channels have videos that are 8 minutes or more, but the whole point of that is because they have a lot to say or they want to run more ads. But at the end of the day, you should be aware if they're actually saying something. Are they giving commentary? Are they giving their opinion that is maybe worth watching 8 minutes of? Or are they just stalling to get to the 8 minutes, which is exactly what I'm seeing with some of these AI videos. This one video that I was watching would go through one sentence of a statement and then explain that one sentence for like 2 minutes, and then get to the next sentence, explain that for 2 minutes, and then they're not really even explaining it. They're just kind of saying, oh, this is crazy, I can't believe this is happening. And I don't understand the point of that. Now, the last time that JK did leave a statement and it was public, everyone knows about it, was January 8th, I checked. And he hasn't left a statement since then. He doesn't just leave statements every day. And so he definitely did not leave this particular statement that's in this video. The boys have left messages in the past, if I remember correctly, that have talked about their mental health and have talked about wanting maybe to take a break. But it makes zero sense for them to say that now that they're in the military because they can't take a break. I mean, if they went to the medical center and probably asked to take a break, I'm sure they could, but most of the time soldiers don't really take a break. They just take maybe like the weekend off and like maybe the normal time that they're off, but they don't get to take an extended vacation. So if JK were to make a statement like that, I could even see that coming across as not patriotic, which I would imagine he would not want to do. So of course, to sum up, I don't believe he left this statement. And anyone who is watching these AI videos with these AI scripts and AI images, just look up if the story is real. If you're like, oh, it sounds kind of crazy that they're just saying that JK is doing this, just do a quick Google search and you'll probably see that it maybe isn't true. Let me know what you think. Make sure to check out Patreon for more videos. Link down below. Link to this little comment right here. Love you, bye.